Jake Collins, a disabled veteran, faces a harsh reality as he's forced to leave his apartment. Sitting in his wheelchair, he watches helplessly as Harold Thompson, the landlord, evicts him under the pretense of unpaid rent. The scene is tense and uncomfortable, with Harold's impatience evident in his demeanor and tone. As Jake tries to gather his belongings, he attempts to reason with Harold about his special needs. He explains his situation as a veteran who returned from Afghanistan with a disability, emphasizing the challenges he faces in finding suitable accommodation. However, Harold remains unmoved. His response is cold and dismissive, treating Jake's circumstances as inconvenient excuses rather than valid concerns. The conversation quickly turns sour when Harold, in a moment of frustration, refers to Jake as a burden. This word cuts deep, revealing Harold's true feelings about tenants with disabilities. Jake is shocked by the blatant disrespect and discrimination, realizing that his service to the country holds little value in Harold's eyes. Feeling defeated but not ready to give up, Jake seeks legal advice. He visits a local law firm, where he learns about the possibility of suing Harold for discrimination. The lawyer explains the Americans with Disabilities Act and Fair Housing Act, detailing how Harold's actions might be in violation of these laws. Despite the daunting prospect of a legal battle, Jake decides to proceed. He recognizes that this fight is not just for himself, but for others who might face similar discrimination. The process seems overwhelming, gathering evidence, preparing statements, and facing Harold in court, but Jake's determination grows stronger. As he leaves the lawyer's office, Jake feels a mix of emotions. There's fear of the unknown and the potential backlash, but also a spark of hope. He realizes that this could be an opportunity to stand up for his rights and the rights of other disabled individuals. The road ahead is challenging, but Jake is ready to face it head-on, drawing strength from the same resilience that got him through his military service. As Jake prepares for his legal battle, he encounters Sarah, a civil rights teacher at the local community college. Sarah, hearing about Jake's situation, offers her assistance. She shares her own experiences fighting prejudice, having dealt with gender discrimination in her academic career. Her story resonates with Jake, providing him with a sense of solidarity and renewed motivation. Sarah's expertise proves invaluable as she helps Jake understand the intricacies of discrimination laws and how to build a strong case. She volunteers her time to help gather evidence and prepare Jake for the challenges ahead. Her involvement brings a new level of credibility and organization to Jake's efforts. Meanwhile, Harold Thompson, feeling threatened by the impending lawsuit, takes a defensive stance. He begins a campaign to discredit Jake, spreading rumors about Jake's disability and military past. Harold insinuates that Jake's injuries might be exaggerated or that his military service was less than honorable. He believes these tactics will protect him from legal consequences and sway public opinion in his favor. Harold's actions, however, begin to backfire. As word spreads about Jake's situation and Harold's behavior, community members start to take notice. Many are outraged by Harold's treatment of a veteran and his apparent disregard for disability rights. In response to the growing tension, a group of concerned citizens organizes a community meeting to discuss discrimination against people with disabilities. The meeting is held at the local library, drawing a surprisingly large crowd. Jake is invited to speak, sharing his story and the challenges he faces daily. The meeting becomes a turning point. As Jake speaks, others in the community come forward with their own stories of discrimination, many involving Harold. It becomes clear that Jake's case is not an isolated incident but part of a larger pattern of prejudice in the town. The community begins to mobilize in support of Jake. A local business owner offers Jake temporary housing, while others volunteer to help with his daily needs. A retired lawyer in the community offers pro bono assistance to strengthen Jake's case. As the meeting concludes, there's a palpable sense of unity and purpose. Jake, who initially felt alone in his fight, now finds himself at the center of a community-wide movement for change. The support bolsters his resolve, transforming his personal struggle into a catalyst for broader social awareness and action. The community meeting becomes a watershed moment for Jake's case. As more residents share their experiences, a clear pattern of Harold's discriminatory behavior emerges. Former tenants recount incidents of neglect, unfair treatment, and outright hostility towards those with disabilities or from minority backgrounds. Jake is surprised by the extent of Harold's misconduct and the number of people affected. One elderly woman describes how Harold refused to install a handrail in her apartment, despite her mobility issues. A single mother reveals how she was evicted after requesting repairs to make her unit safe for her child with autism. These stories paint a damning picture of Harold's landlord practices and strengthen Jake's resolve to pursue legal action. Sarah, recognizing the power of collective action, suggests organizing a peaceful protest in front of Harold's property. The idea gains traction quickly, with many attendees volunteering to participate and spread the word. They decide to hold the protest on a Saturday morning to maximize visibility and participation. As news of the planned protest spreads, tension in the town escalates. Harold's supporters, mostly business owners who benefit from his properties, begin to push back. They argue that Harold has the right to manage his properties as he sees fit and claim that the protesters are overreacting. Jake finds himself at the center of a growing controversy. Some community members praise him for standing up to injustice, while others accuse him of causing unnecessary trouble. The local newspaper runs a front-page story about the dispute, bringing even more attention to the case. Harold, feeling cornered, decides to escalate his tactics. He threatens to fire any of his employees who participate in the protest. He also warns his commercial tenants that he will not renew their leases if they support Jake's cause. These threats create a climate of fear amongst some residents who depend on Harold for their livelihoods. Despite the pressure, many in the community remain undeterred. They see Harold's threats as further proof of his unethical behavior. Jake, initially uncomfortable with the attention, begins to embrace his role as a catalyst for change. He works with Sarah to craft a message that goes beyond his personal case, addressing broader issues of accessibility and equal rights in the community. As the day of the protest approaches, the town becomes divided. The controversy forces residents to confront long-ignored issues of discrimination and power dynamics within their community. What started as one man's fight for fair housing has evolved into a larger movement for social justice. The day of the protest arrives, bringing a mix of tension and anticipation. A crowd gathers in front of Harold's main property, carrying signs and chanting for justice. Jake, positioned at the front, prepares to address the assembled group. As Jake begins his speech, a hush falls over the crowd. He speaks plainly about his experiences, detailing the challenges he's faced since returning from Afghanistan. Jake describes how Harold's discrimination made him feel worthless and unwelcome in his own community. His words resonate with many, especially when he emphasizes that this fight is not just for him, but for anyone who has ever felt marginalized or excluded. Jake's speech strikes a chord with the protesters. His sincerity and determination are evident, and his message of inclusion and respect garners strong support. As he concludes, the crowd erupts in applause and renewed chanting. The protest attracts significant media attention. Local news stations arrive to cover the event, and reporters interview Jake and other participants. The coverage brings the issue to a wider audience, putting Harold in an increasingly negative light. Social media buzzes with discussions about disability rights and landlord responsibilities. Harold, watching the protest from his office window, grows increasingly agitated. He hadn't anticipated this level of public scrutiny. His phone rings constantly with calls from business associates and friends asking about the situation. Harold realizes that his reputation, which he's spent years building, is rapidly crumbling. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Harold retreats to his home. There, away from prying eyes, he experiences a nervous breakdown. Years of suppressed guilt and insecurity surface as he grapples with the consequences of his actions. In a moment of clarity, he recognizes the harm he's caused, not just to Jake, but to many others over the years. Despite this moment of self-reflection, Harold's pride prevents him from backing down. He convinces himself that admitting fault would be a sign of weakness. Instead, he decides to double down on his stance, believing that he can weather this storm if he remains firm. As the day ends, the protest disperses peacefully, but its impact lingers. The community is energized, and discussions about discrimination and accessibility continue long after the last sign is put away. Jake, exhausted but encouraged, realizes that regardless of the legal outcome, he's already achieved something significant by bringing these issues to light.